Hello and welcome back to Icebane Films. Today I'm going to be doing a art time-lapse of Eevee. I finished this one quite a while ago, but I didn't really have a chance to edit it until now. So, well, let's get started. So I started off by trying to plot out some lines, and I ended up putting the Eevee in the very bottom corner of the screen at first. I decided I was going to go with more messy lines for all of my more grotesque style stuff. Things like this Eevee and the rest of the Pokemon I plan on drawing are going to be in this style. I tried figuring out what I wanted the Eevee to be eating. At first it was going to be a Rattata, but then I decided it would be some flesh, some offal hanging from its mouth, and I kept putting it off to the side of the screen, which isn't really good form, and I tried to figure out how I wanted to draw the creature that the Eevee was ripping into. I spent quite a long time on this step, trying to figure out what I wanted it to look like, and I kept on popping over to another screen to look at references to see what I wanted to do with it. I pulled up pictures of rats and Rattatas, and ultimately I end up just not doing a Rattata, but I tried a bunch of different ways until ultimately I just landed on a pile of rotting flesh or whatever. That way I didn't have to conform to any specific size or style of creature. I drew a little bone here, and I decided to place the Eevee's arm or leg on the pile to make it look like it's pushing it down as it's eating. I chose to make Eevee eating another creature because in real life, foxes, which is what Eevee is, usually are scavenger animals, and they'll eat prey animals left by other animals. Or they go after smaller, more defenseless animals like rabbits and birds. So I decided to go with a more of a scavenger type of Eevee, and I decided to make it a little bit rabid as well, as you'll see later. I decided for a skull to be in the foreground, to be of a Cubone or whatever, maybe a young Tauros, who knows. It's a little small at the moment, but I do increase the size later on. I do pause a lot in the initial layout because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with it to make it look better. I added a few extra little lines here and there, zoomed it in a bit, and then I started working on the hind leg in the back there, and a little bit more detail lines. I ended up wanting to have more thick and detailed lines around it. The messier the lines, the better with this art style in particular. Usually I don't like to have this messy of lines, but since I was going for my grotesque style, usually I like it to have a lot of sketch lines. I took a break in between the last second and this one, so I was thinking about what I wanted to do with it. So I made the skull bigger, obviously, because it was a bit small, and I started adjusting little things that I saw flaws with. I took a week break, so I got a fresh set of eyes, things that I didn't like seeing. I decided to fix right then and there. And I started making the rot, the offal, look more sinewy, more stringy, that kind of stuff. Drew in a bunch of little tendons and stuff, made a little bit of blood pouring down, and I decided to plot out areas where there would be shadow, since I'm going to be coloring over the lines anyways, and I think it adds a little bit more to that messy feel that I want to go for with this piece. do a little bit more line cleanup, and I added a little bit of rabid foam to the corner of its mouth and added a little bit more detail to the lines on the face. And I made the fur look a little bit fuzzier. Here I started doing the coloring, a lot of color flats, and I went with tan for the accents of the Eevee, as Eevee tends to do. I started with this very warm brown color, and I was coloring a little bit more than I intended to. I ended up realizing that I didn't like this brown. It didn't feel correct for what I was going for. While it was closer to what an actual Eevee's color scheme would be, I wanted to have a more muted and eerie color of brown. So I chose to go with this one that you see now. It's a lot muddier and a lot less warm feeling when you look at it. Decided to go with some animal type eyes. Went with like orange brown. Since Eevee in Pokemon usually has black to brown eyes, they look kind of like black beads, but if you look closely, they have a tiny bit of a shine that's in brown. And I felt like that was possibly a little bit too dark because it wouldn't be really visible. Though, looking back at it now, with like a month between me recording this and today when I'm doing the voiceover, I feel like maybe the darker eyes would have been better, because then it would feel a little more soulless, but that's fine. Did a little bit of blood around the mouth because obviously it's eating. Predator animals tend to do that. A nice maroon to make it look like it's blood, and added the detail to the red in the offal. Since I did all the lines to make it look messier, I have to do a lot of coloring by hand, so it's not like drop type stuff. Added some sun bleaching to the skull, even though technically speaking, if it's a fresh skull, freshly picked skull, it would not look so clean. It's fine. That's just how I like to do skulls. I like them to look nice and bleached. And then I add a little bit of blood to the skull because, you know, look cool. Colored that bone there. And I did the ribs here. A little bit of a pause here. I must have gotten up to use the bathroom. And then I decided to color the foam. I started with a blue and just kept working my way up to a white, and added little bubbles to make it look like it's more frothy. If I was to go back and redo this, I would make the bubbles in the foam translucent because, well, you know. Chose to go with a rotting green color for the flesh that's sitting on the ground. I kept on trying to figure out ways to texture it to make it look better, but the more texturing I did, the less good it looked, in my opinion. I did some blurring between some of the things that I did on the flesh to make it look a little bit more blended, and I did some cleanup around the blood. Chose to go with a dark background, going for black, and I added a multiply layer, and I decided to make it look kind of like you are pointing a flashlight at the Eevee. There's a little bit of flashing lights here, sorry about that, but I was just trying to figure out how it would work out. Kept adding more and more layers and erasing from them. And did a little bit of like that flashlight ring that you see if it's a focused beam in like an older flashlight. And I tried figuring out where the shadows would be landing if it's a direct from camera perspective light source. I've never used this light source before, so I feel like I did a good job, though I wouldn't really consider it professional level yet. I would need to do more practice with this before I would be comfortable sending it to a client. I added a little bit of shine to things that I felt would be a little bit shiny, and then I did some darker shading on everything to add a little bit more volume and a little bit of accent coloring. Made the paw a little bit bloody since it is standing in the offal. Add a little bit of blood to the mane and into the froth of the foam from the mouth. And I added a little bit of glow to everything to make it pop a little bit more, stand out, that kind of stuff. And I decided that the background felt a little empty, so I was trying to figure out how to make the background feel less empty. I decided to go with action lines for some reason. That's another thing that if I was to go back I would probably change, but you know, hindsight. It's been a while since I finished this. I never go back and work on a piece once I say it's done. That's one of my personal MOs. And I just kept adding a little bit more shading to everything. It's been a while since I finished this project, so I just needed to finish up this video so that you guys could see it. And here I'm just trying to figure out how to make the shading a little bit better. And I decided to make it look like this is a stinky boy because, well, foxes, they stink. In real life, they smell terrible. So I decided to make it look like he has like a murderous aura or just a very poisonous smell. And I decided to add my signature around it, and I was trying to figure out where I wanted to place it. Ended up just placing it around the shoulder. A few more accent lines to make things pop, and well, this is it. This is my Eevee. Thank you guys very much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and well, most importantly, have a good one. Bye.